Good afternoon, everybody. I can already see that the food's calling me outside. So I'll keep it short. The idea was to give a glimpse of what my interactions with the industry CISOs are these days. There was a time when our discussion with security teams, CISOs and CIOs used to be about risk management. Talking to them about individual siloed security issues that they face. We talk to them about issues in doing inventory right, issues in doing assessment right, issues in doing remediation engineering right. But our conversations slowly changed into things that would mimic the board language a bit, right? Because the board doesn't understand all your individual security efforts that you put. So we started talking the language of risk reduction over time. Whatever you did, is it resulting in any kind of risk reduction? Later on, interestingly, in the last 2 years, a lot of board members have become very cyber aware, which is a really good thing. And there was a time when we used to consider all our board members dumb, cyber dumb. So every time you walk into making a communication with the board, the CISOs had an increasingly challenging task of dumbing down the discussion so that the other guy can understand. Right? Because or else there's no communication, right? Unless you dumb it down to a level that he understands. Like to me, for example, might be funny, but my understanding of cryptocurrency is exactly as much as my son has. Because both of us were introduced to cryptocurrency at the same time. Right? So what was happening is CISOs were failing to give the right visibility of risk to business. Business was failing to invest or sponsor in their cyber programs because they just didn't understand each other. So we're talking about how our discussions have begun to transit towards breach prevention topics today. It's no longer business talking about risk reduction, no longer talking about security challenges solved with the SIEM or a product like this, product like that. Now they're talking about we are 5% more closer towards breach reduction because we made an investment like this, right? So in the next 13 minutes or so, so why is it important? What has happened is, everybody knows this is the era of digital economy. Businesses are no longer fighting among each other because of their nature of their core business. For example, a bank today is not fighting with another bank in terms of interest rates. They're all the same. To be honest, for a user like us, we probably can't differentiate between ICICI, SDFC and Axis. For us, they're all banks. All of them have the same products. They carry the same portfolio, right? Nobody has an advantage over others. So what they're doing is they're making digital their advantage or their differentiator. They're making it look like cyber risk is business risk. Only when they're able to translate cyber risk as business risk, they're able to get the right funds at the right time to support a digital initiative that's bringing your customer closer to you, right? Very recently, if you look at important phenomena in and around the country today, everything has become revolutionary. UPI is revolutionary. Today, you and me can go to a pav bhaji stall, right? Or a chole kulche stall, and that guy doesn't have to spend any money, any power in bringing up a POS system to take money from people who do not bring in cash. Right? So this is how business inclusivity is increasing because of transformation changes. And what is happening is customers are getting closer to their businesses this way. Right? Now what we have started seeing a fundamental shift in our discussions with CISOs and CIOs, chief of risk, or any kind of operational risk is, there was a time when there were departments separately called as operational risk and information risk. These teams have started coming together because they know that information risk is actually putting a business at risk. So they are beginning to communicate the same language. So what are the trends that our CISO friends are discussing with the board? They start with easy topics. I've always seen that. They start with easy topics because not everybody in the board may be an equal champion. So they talk about things like, let's focus on risk. Instead of me telling, we bought a new two-factor authentication technology by spending this money on this vendor, or we spent a new product called API security, where there is no appreciation for the board. They talk about this resulted in reduction of risk, right? We are one more step closer towards this compliance. We are one more step towards being able to launch a new digital service now that will allow us to interact with our partners and increase business to 24% or for 30% more. So this is the language that they're understanding, right? They're talking about attack surface. Every time there's a boardroom jargon, it becomes a market by itself. Attack surface management. Has it not existed in the past? 20, 30 years ago, if you did a small, simple, angry IP scanner scan, it was all about identifying your attack surface, right? But the attack surface discussions have modified to look at things beyond just standard stuff. Today you're looking at your exposure management. Like you're talking about what's exposed that can potentially kill me. Prioritize that, risk rank it, put a number behind it, quantify it, and show it to me, right? So these are the discussions that they're doing. They're talking about tool stack consolidation. Many people confuse that with vendor consolidation. It's not vendor consolidation. Vendor consolidation probably means let's go and have a commercial agreement from a specific vendor to cover multiple things just from them. I'm talking about tool stack consolidation that brings teams together. Today, one problem that has never been solved is IT using some tool, security using some tool, lot of overlap, lot of commonality in data. Data still doesn't match. If there was a picture going around a couple years ago. What brought in the biggest digital transformation in your company? And the answer wasn't containers and cloud. The answer was COVID, right? So what is happening is now people need to look at tool stack consolidation in the sense that teams are able to work together in tandem, fast-paced response, be able to cover more surface together, right? That's what boards are talking with CISOs. Also talking about stakeholder alignment. Many a times, if you look at the simple story that we just recently saw with the Uber breach, the poor CISO got fired, but we are just holding one individual responsible for an org-wide issue. So either there were weak processes which the CISO does not have to disclose to the board or the CEO, and he took a call by himself, which is all probably less possible, but one individual got penalized. What they try to do is the communication is beginning to include more stakeholders. Bring in the CIO, bring in the chief of risk, bring in the chief of finance, right? And align all the stakeholders together. If it's supposed to be an executive sponsor to a certain project, let's bring in all the alignment of everybody involved, not just the CISO. Now, what's the point of bringing your CISO to the bigger table, giving him a chair at the board or whatsoever, and then not listening to him, right? So this is another discussion happening. The other thing is automation, driving efficiency. Many times we speak to so many CISOs that talk about how they have been engaged from long time, talking about integration. They talk a lot about machine learning, but you ask them very simple questions. How many technologies do you have in your organization? 45. Are they talking to each other? No, they don't have simple integrations, but on the other hand, they're talking about AI, ML, and stuff like that. Simple integrations are missing. So we're talking about looking at how CISOs are now trying to make sure that they're able to get more out of what they have rather than looking for a new thing every time there's a new challenge, right? These kind of discussions have become increasingly, high efficiency outcomes with boards and CISOs. Of course, inventory, risk mitigation, the ability to detect something timely, respond something timely is a perennial discussion that never stops. And of course, compliance. So existential risk, I did speak about it and I will elaborate if we have time. Cyber risk is business risk. If you aren't able to contain cyber risk, it might have an impact into your business existence, right? We know of many companies that did not do cyber right and businesses ceased to exist, which is why cyber risk can probably also become a threat to your existential risk. This is a bigger discussion with our new age CISOs these days. Finally, the topic that I like most, quantifying a cyber risk, right? Every time you have someone telling you, I can quantify your risk into a certain number. It is flooded with variables. Somebody says, I'm going to give you an example or glimpse of this problem resulting in a certain business loss. They never have a mathematical equation right. It's flooded with siloed variables that probably do not have a mechanism to go and question or go and validate. So cyber risk quantification is beginning to take a key part in every CISO and board discussion. They're trying their best to quantify whether or not a certain investment in terms of people, process, and technology would have actually reduced the risk to a certain thing, certain number, certain value that allowed them to do more business. Look at the fact that at the end of the day, while the CISO and his team are helping you fight security challenges, they are also supposed to be telling you how much risk is too much risk, what's their risk appetite. Unless you take risk, you can't do business. So the CISO is the right guy to tell you whether or not we have more appetite to take more risks to bring in more business. So this is also a frequent point of discussion with the new age CISOs and the board. Then comes the cost part of it, right? It's always a balance. Interestingly, what's happening is cyber insurance is becoming an interesting topic. Many people are discussing about it. They're like, why should I even care when I can just throw some money at my insurance, something goes wrong, I don't have an impact, right? And the worst part is cyber insurance companies are able to get good customers. And if you ask them, how are you convincing your customers to pay you that kind of premium? They're like, oh, you know what? We look at the company, look at the revenue, throw a number, they never say no. They never say no. So what is happening is, we told them, instead of spending all that money in your insurance, how about you spend some money in improving your posture? And then pay only for the differential risk. So your premiums can come down, right? It's like you have a car insurance. You did not get into an accident situation this year. You were able to get something called your no claim bonus, right? What you do is you only pay for your your residual risk, not for the entire thing. So what you could do is, you have to strike a balance. Do insurance, maybe if it's important for compliance reasons, to keep your stakeholders happy, to keep your board happy, to keep your customers happy, do it. But how about you slice out a certain section that allows your cyber insurance also to understand that you have done your due diligence. I'm telling you, these insurances are easy to buy, but hard to claim, very hard to claim. They'll say, oh, your breach happened because you have a certain software which was running end-of-life software, and that's not a part of our fine print in the contract. This is like deliberate. You wanted this breach to happen. Gone case. So all your insurances vanishes, right? So this is a discussion that's happening more and more often. Tools and people, right? So this will always remain a debacle, right? You hire someone, treat them well, spend money on their training, making them better talent. 2 years later, they get 3x their package, they vanish, right? The tool's there, the process is there, only the equation on people changes. If we have to follow the old school method of people, process, and technology, one thing that's very dicey is the people part, right? If you are able to make that churn something that does not disturb your equation, you'll still be well off. So the idea here is to balance the cost on tools versus people. I'm not saying necessarily it should always result in you getting a tool that results in 3 people getting fired because it's automated now, right? But you should have a balance between whether or not our tool spending, which is a big part of our cybersecurity cost, is balanced well with the cost on people. When I say cost on people, should include cost on training them, making sure that they are adequately trained to do their jobs, plus the fact that the people and processes do not have a higher impact on people leaving. So then comes all the innovation. First thing is platformization, right? Many people think platformization is only about consolidating cost. But believe me, we are a platform provider. We have a cloud platform. We've been on a cloud platform since 22 years. The biggest thing we bring in on the table is efficiency, biggest thing. And there is really no metrics in terms of dollars to measure efficiency. Maybe I saved you tons of time. Time is money. Maybe I saved you tons of efforts. Effort is money. Maybe I saved you a lot of people. Cost on people is money. So we are consolidating a lot with a platform. So platform is beyond just a place which brings multiple tools together with one single pane of glass. Look at the fact that it is a key element to doing something called consolidation. The next thing is automation. Automation brings in speed. I'm not sure if you guys remember exactly a year ago, something called log4j happened, right? It disturbed our Christmas, it disturbed our New Year's, right? Globally, we validated among 150 million events that 17 days is, on an average, what people spent on being able to fix log4j. But only when all hands were on deck solving just log4j, right? And it was getting all that public attention and PR that it needed. What about others, the ones that do not get all this attention? They're probably 170 days or more. The other part is IT teams, so security teams coming to us and saying, Deb, we don't want to do this right because there is just no incentive for us. Why is that? I'm like, see, we have got an agent, Qualys agent running on that machine. Vulnerability appears in 4 hours. We get to know it. This is called mean time to detect. Perfect, under 4 hours. Then comes mean time to communicate. I have to then communicate with somebody. And that takes 2 weeks. Because this says, oh, you are saying there's a vulnerability in that software. My CMDB says we don't have that software on the machine. So I'm not going to look at it. Ticket cancelled, start a fresh ticket. Right? So by the time the message has been communicated and has been accepted as yes, this is a valid finding, we'll work on it, it is 2 weeks. Then comes your time to remediate. So the worst part is these guys are like, we are not getting adequate, appreciation because despite me finding that problem in 4 days, IT still managed to miss the SLA by 90 days. Right? So it's like, we aren't getting appreciation enough. We found it in 4 hours, still we managed to skip an SLA of 90 days. Then comes cost. Cost is by far the most easiest and the toughest discussion when new age CISOs are discussing with board. It is all boiling down to whether or not you have adequately represented the risk and made it look like this is a problem that money can fix. If you're able to do that, the fund's there, right? But of course, this will be a challenge for those who aren't able to translate that a technology risk is something that of course money can solve, or if you did have a history of funds being approved, but all of a sudden it stopped, maybe you did not do a good job around reciprocating back to the sponsor that the last project went on fine, things like that. But this does happen to be a big part of the discussion for the new generation CISO. Now, cybersecurity happens to be an unfair game. I'll tell you why. How many of us can go and launch a scan? I was just having this discussion with Vivek. Like, how many of us can launch a scan without any approval? We can't. We are supposed to be the good guys with the right intention to fix when you find some problem. But I need a plethora of change management controls to do something, while the hacker out there is scanning me every day. He's not even waiting for the weekends, right? I'm being continuously disrupted by somebody who is outside and is not important for my organization. But me, in being inside with the right intention, the right responsibility and the opportunity to fix things, am being questioned. It's an unfair game, right? I have to be successful every time. They have to be successful only once a year. Bug bounty prices have gone so up, couple of bug bounties and the hacker is happy for a year. We need to reduce bug bounty prices. So basically like they say, make it difficult or not so interesting for a hacker. How do you do it? Don't pay money on bug bounties much. Pay 10 bucks, 20 bucks. They're not interested anymore then, right? Then comes context. You will not believe there are free products that gives out a lot of asset context to your attackers who mean nothing to the security of an organization, but too less or zero context to people for whom the asset is very valuable, right? So making sure that you are able to use these disconnected tool sets and are able to identify the asset's true importance before somebody else does is very important. Next thing is, as a security practitioner inside, you must always show that you put some effort. The hacker doesn't have to prove his SLA to anybody. He doesn't have a boss bothering him. He's not telling him, oh, you were supposed to make 3 SQL ingestions and 4 cross-site scripting and 8 remote exploits this week. You did not meet your quota. It's not happening to them, but it's happening to folks internally, right? So this is an unfair game. So this slide probably should have been a couple slides earlier. This is a platform approach. The approach is there solely to be able to allow you to scale. Scale, precision, accuracy are the 3 ways that would allow you to fight any cyber risk. So a platform allows you to do that, be it across any kind of asset, regardless of where the asset is, regardless of what the asset is. If it's an attack surface, you should be able to take care of it. You need the ability to scale up as a platform, right? Without any exceptions on type of asset, region, location of asset, it being a work from home asset or a mobile device that was supposed to be used by your sales guy to collect orders. If it's an infection surface, if it's an attack surface, you must have a strategy, and a platform approach is the best way to do it near real time at scale. Then comes outcome. So this is the new thing. What is happening is your communication with people who CISO offices impact, or people who fund CISO projects, are now looking at outcome-based investments. Okay, we'll make this spend. What would this result in? Right? It should be a finite loop. Right? I'm not sure if many of us are aware of Turing machines. It should be a finite loop that says you do this, it results in this. This is what was exactly expected to happen, and this resulted in this. Maybe the quotient will increase over time because it needs some. We have EDR technology, not very popular because we didn't start with EDR, right? But what happens is like, oh, I have these 5 issues. Can you fix it? They're no longer bothered about whether or not you are a pedigree vendor X or vendor Y. As long as you get my job done in the best consolidated manner, allowing me to respond at scale and respond at the pace I want, and allows me to freely communicate with my stakeholders, we are good. So outcome-driven security programs. Things being discussed, external attack surface management, big market by itself. Cybersecurity asset management means asset management purpose built for the purpose of cybersecurity, not for the purpose of CMDB or creating an inventory of assets, right? Then comes threat intelligence. Then comes SOAR and automation, or low code, no code automation. Patch management, essential part of your remediation engineering, in your organization. Patch is of course a small part of it. Means only the patchable ones can be attended. Then comes XDR, EDR, which are not products. Remember, XDR and EDR are not products. They are strategies. Okay, you do not have a silver bullet to fix it, right? And of course, the ability to have near real time ability to find out vulnerabilities, managing vulnerability risk, in a risk-based model. Perfect. So cyber risk quantification, again, should have been a couple of slides earlier. Looking at asset criticality, location of the asset, nature of the vulnerability. Do we have a compensating control to take care of the problem? Is it a certificate risk? Are there known malware about it? Is it an end-of-life software? Does it have a weaponized exploit code outside, right? All these things must be considered as a part of effective cyber risk quantification. Today, people invest a lot of time. They do want to move away from CVSS-based prioritization, but they do not end up doing enough to have a proper, normalized, scalable way of quantifying risk. So find out all the necessary elements that will impact the criticality of an asset, even including looking at source of inputs like your data classification tools to tell you whether or not this asset has critical data. Many times companies are spending time and money and efforts on securing assets that did not require adequate security because they didn't really have anything on them, right? So make sure that your quantification process includes those essential elements. With that, you and me both can go to lunch. The idea was to make sure that we have a cost-effective, continuous way of risk reduction that does not make you feel like probably security is only for the select rich individuals and not for everybody. At Qualys, we are trying to democratize cybersecurity, making it for everybody, that wants security, right? Thank you very much for your time. If you have questions, we'll be happy to attend to your questions at our booth or at lunch. Enjoy your DSCI, AISS programs. Thank you.